This week on Aristeia 101, it's the legendary Bahadurs. So the legendary Bahadurs, OBERON, KOORIE Queen, SHONA Corona, and Final Boss were the last of the 2018 expansions. These are all former champions. They are actually really interesting characters. And we're just going to go over some simple synergies with them. OBERON for deck manipulation and silence. OBERON is the team's support character. He benefits the team by drawing cards and imposing negative states on enemies. Also, he can discard cards to give his allies a yellow die. Silenced is a state only he can give out and is generally horrifying to everyone else. Being able to stop someone from using an ability is unique in the game and is pretty much what will make him a high priority target. Now with the switch, choosing to stun or dazzle is quite powerful because you can choose the one which is more appropriate for the target. Stunned might be better against targets with difficult rolls or nothing past a 1-1 range. Dazzled is better for ranged support or offensive characters. Now it's worth noting that Shona's Vigor tactic gives her an energy point discount against stunned and dazzled targets. Likewise, Final Boss's Swim move ability benefits from enemies being stunned or dazzled. His Eye Coal negates success as well, so stacking that with stunned is fairly amazing, very powerful. Oh Ho Ho, Surprise requires a stunned target, which OBERON can provide. Then Crystal Clear imposes Immobilize to all stunned enemies. This is what I like about the Bahadurs, is they have a lot of stuff that stacks on each other. I'm Hope, adding a yellow die is good for OBERON, and you'll forget when waking. Shona can use it primarily for trying to hit her character switch and broadsword switch. It can also help her get the switch for Whirlwind. KOORIE Queen switches can all benefit from the yellow. Bounce in particular needs a little help trying to get the additional block required for its switch. When it comes to tactics, well, Destiny is a big play. This is a till the end of the round no for everything, including your own tactics. Ideally, you should have OBERON in a protected position because it goes away should he go to the infirmary. Consider Destiny to be protection against your opponent's deck at the cost of your own. You absolutely need to be prepared for it. This is not a tactic to be used without some thought. Delirium is an interesting card because you're sending cards to the discard pile, but your opponent is replacing them if they have available cards. Now, in Magic, the Gathering, if you can get someone to go through their entire deck, they lose the game. Aristeia isn't quite that harsh, but certainly reducing their options benefits the whole team. Despair can be used on yourself or your opponent. It's actually a foreshadowing of what the TCOM Advanced Tactics deck does, and has an interesting decision to be made regarding what is kept versus going to the bottom of the deck. That said, OBERON can mitigate the negative aspect of this for you via You'll Remember When Dreaming. And finally, Desire is universally beneficial to the team provided you're not basing your tactics deck on bringing back cards to your deck, or at least that card. SHONA CARANO for skirmishing and some positional influence. SHONA is a melee aristo with a hard-hitting attack, interesting movement options, plus the ability to flip state tokens on herself. Her ideal range is a little larger than normal for a melee aristo, giving her a larger threat range as a result. Hit the Blade and Broadsword can both displace targets. Hit the Blade can also allow Shona to displace herself, as does Defense at a Distance. Getting enemies out of the scoring zone, displacing them away from vulnerable allies such as OBERON, plus knocking them into line of sight or out of cover so allies have an easier time follow up, are all ways you can make use of this. Do note that obstacles can be targeted by attacks, so Shona can influence the Hexadome by moving them. It is not as practical or as efficient as Hexer's Vader Retro ability, but it is there. And if an enemy is dazzled, stunned, or immobilized, you can displace them into potentially advantageous positions for Final Boss's swim move. Tactics. Amputate is a powerful ability that can save an ally or leave you in an uncontested scoring zone. Do note that while she has to impose a -2 energy on herself, it will flip at the end of her turn, leaving her with a -1 instead. The mere threat of this card can possibly distract your opponent to over-prioritizing Shona or avoiding her. Given it has a 1-2 range, a dazzled character 2 spaces away is the ideal target. OBERON can contribute to this, as well as Final Boss, so they go ahead, they dazzle the targets, and Shona's got a much safer attack. Likewise, Stunned from KOORIE Queen or OBERON could make this attack much safer. Vigor is a card that capitalizes on Dazzled and Stunned, states that OBERON, Final Boss, and KOORIE can all give out in various ways. Ideally, she should either be surrounded or have a high priority target with the required states. Turning Broadsword into a 2 energy attack and hit the blade into a 1 energy attack can be really good. This gives you the freedom to mix and match between damage and displacement potential depending on what you need at the moment, such as clearing a zone of hard targets or filling up the infirmary, or just pushing them out. Riposte helps Shona defend an area. While it doesn't necessarily increase the odds of her escaping with no damage taken, it makes attacking her much more dangerous in ranges 1-2. And honestly, anything that makes her dangerous is going to kind of take the load off the rest of the team. Whirlwind is a nice bit of uncontested damage with its range of 1-2. More than that is the fact that its switch can be directing damage, additional damage on top of that. This will help with high defense enemies that are hard to damage. KOORIE Queen to attack at range and protect via debuffing. The ability to gain the hidden state will help KOORIE in a number of roles. Attacking, using bounce to inflict stun to try to get to the scoring zone, all great. Feral Spirit gives her hidden at the beginning of her activation if no enemies are within range 1-3. This helps reduce her need for protection against ranged opponents and debuffs. KOORIE's character switch allows her to get away from an enemy blocker by displacing, and then protects her with hidden. Again, this helps her be a little less reliant on outside assistance, and this is kind of something you see throughout the team, and this frees up teammates. It's worth noting that Hide does not stop OBERON's I'm Hope passive ability. As such, she can benefit from it even while hidden. Not all buffs can say this. Boomerang is quite nice, but it's a switch that leads into bounce that makes her so valuable to the team. She can do damage and debuff via stun and hitting that second target within range 1-3 with no line of sight required. This helps the whole team by making it safer for them to attack, reduces the enemy's damage output, and lessens the chances of success for their various abilities. This is particularly good for Shona with Vigor and Final Boss with Swim Move. Regarding her tactics, Huntress Queen gives a selective damage buff against one target. This will play very well with all the other characters on your team except for Oberon. To maximize this benefit to the team, she probably should go first or second in your initiative order, however. Hidden in the Sand is a good way to get some extra movement in KOORIE's turn. Whether this is used offensively or defensively is up to you. Additionally, using this instead of moving would allow you to use Boomerang and Bounce, or use Bounce twice. This opens up options for her and lets her support the team rather nicely. Special Spin is an excellent tactic in general, but is particularly good for Final Boss in Shona. The uncontested damage for it is icing on the cake. You know I love uncontested damage. And finally, Whispers from the Desert is a nice punishment for attacking teammates. It's great for KOORIE if she's in a crowd of enemies, by her choice or not, but ideally she should be first or second in the initiative order to maximize this. Conversely, that does give them time to get out of the range of Whispers from the Desert. Finally, it's final boss, and he is your upfront, frontline skirmisher and really just a slippery bastard. He's very up close and personal with a number of 1-1 moves, his character switch being range 1-2, and his attack being range 1-4. He's a frontliner right up there with SHONA. The fact final boss can potentially hand out 3 different states to enemies is a tremendous boon to the team, especially when so many of them use it. While the ranges are limited, it still helps that he can hand out Stunned, -2 movement, and Dazzled. Additionally, his teammates can benefit from all of these states. -2 movement is a boon for SHONA and KOORIE, and helps keep OBERON a bit safer. Dazzled helps protect everyone's offense, including SHONA, as no one has to be 1-1 for their attacks. Swim move helps final boss capitalize on these states with additional mobility options. And finally, actually final boss's ICOL helps him survive at this really kind of a hazardous range normally. Throw that in with Dazzled, throw it in with Stunned, and yeah, he's actually really hard to hurt. When it comes to his tactics, Wilma allows final boss to throw barriers and minions around the Hexadome. This is a useful tool for influencing the flow of traffic, much like you can do with SHONA actually, because you can create choke points, you can cut off routes through blocked spaces, things like that. Moreover, if the obstacle is a barrier, it makes a nice little attack as well. Either way, this is great for SHONA and OBERON, but KOORIE's ability to hit enemies with bounce after boomerang does not have a line of sight requirement, so she can really take advantage of this. It's also worth pointing out that, again, minions are obstacles. You can throw obstacles. This is really nice. Oh Ho Ho Surprise allows final boss to trade stun states on enemies with 2 damage. KOORIE Queen and OBERON can set this up, although it can conflict with SHONA, who makes use of stun states for her Vigor tactic, and the safer attacks from 2 spaces away. That said, the fact final boss also moves adjacent to the enemy is quite valuable since he is now in his ideal range. You will need to think about how you want to play things, especially if SHONA and final boss are in the same proximity to each other. Chimera Ram is an excellent tactic to get through the fray, just pretty much any place that's rife with blockers. The 4 displacements are really nice because you don't have to make your disengage rolls. Adding face meet fist at the end of this is particularly useful as well. Crystal Clear works fantastically well with OBERON and KOORIE, granting that the team is willing to put out the stun states beforehand. There's no range to this tactic, so it's very powerful if set up. And again, having everyone immobilize that, it gives OBERON more movement options, which is always good. Gives KOORIE more targets to go to. She can get to her ideal preferred range, which is not so close. And of course, SHONA, she can just run up and smack someone. So this is a great tactic for this team. And that's just a real quick overview with some of the basic synergies between the legendary Bahadur. For the next 4 episodes, we're going to be looking into the 2019 releases. So that's going to be Chemical Brothers, Master of Puppets, Reckless Hearts, and of course, Double Trouble. Like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for listening in.